The first tsunami of users, pirated software, pirated music were the most commonly used case of the internet.
How can advisory firms like Reflexical help balance short-term economic goals with long-term technological advancements?
Not the Dhirubhai Ambani and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and those sort of people. Instead, there were people who, let us say, lived very close to where I live.
Given your experience in Web3, how do you see the industry evolving in the next few years, especially with new technologies coming in like AI and blockchain?
Hey, you have US dollar and UAE dirham and Indian rupee and whatever else. And let's not use that. Let's use this cryptocurrency instead.
How have you taught yourself in the next 5 years?
Luckily, I got connected with you and the effort that you are taking. It makes me extra privileged to be part of it.
Hi everyone, I'm Mohsinaa Ahmad. Welcome to Boss Talks, where transformative conversations meet actionable insights. In each episode, we have conversations on the intersection of modern leadership, exploring how spirituality shapes decision-making, how sustainability drives innovation, how technology transforms business, and how emotional intelligence powers lasting success. Today, we have Ajeet Khurana, a true pioneer at the intersection of technology, entrepreneurship, and the Web3 revolution. Ajeet currently leads Reflexical, a venture supporting Web3 startups, and serves as the founding member of the prestigious Davos Web3 Round Table. His impressive career spans leadership roles as the former CEO of cryptocurrency exchange ZPay and heading India's blockchain and cryptocurrency committee. With deep roots in the startup ecosystem, Ajeet previously led IIT Bombay's business incubator and remains an active angel investor with the Mumbai Angels. His entrepreneurial journey includes founding multiple successful ventures in education and technology. An alumnus of the University of Texas in Austin, where he also lectured, Ajeet is also an accomplished author and recognized expert in e-commerce and cross-border trade. As he often quotes Oscar Wilde's, "Be yourself, everyone else is already taken," a philosophy that has guided his authentic approach to innovation and leadership. Hi Ajeet, welcome to my show Boss Talks. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well and humbled to be in a show which is called Boss Talks.
Thank you so much for joining in. So you have quoted Oscar Wilde's quote many times, "Be yourself, everyone else is already taken." How does this philosophy guide your personal and professional decision making?
So my mind goes back to when I was a high school student. Quite likely I was in the age of like 15, 13, 14, those sort of things. And this was the period, I guess, in my life where I started asserting myself and hence would get into a lot of quarrels with my father, right? I guess my own sons did that with me. So I guess there is a certain period. Now, whenever I would do something, my father would take the position that, "Why are you doing this? Does anybody do something like this?" And I would always tell him that, "Why do you tell me do other people do like," right? And this was a very common occurrence. And one fine day, I told him, "Listen, let's just talk about it. Are more people in the world happy or sad?" So he says, "Very difficult to say." I said, "Still, when you meet people, are they saying life is the greatest or are they complaining about life?" So he says, "It seems more people are sad." So I said that if more people are sad, then if you're asking me to be like people are, do you want me to be sad? And he did not have any answer. And he's like, "Oh, you know how to use your words, etc." But while I don't think I impressed him very much that day, but I impressed myself. And I realized that on the one hand, we try to conform to everything that's going on around us. That means we try to be other people. And on the other hand, we don't want the same outcome as them. We want to be better than them, happier than them, more fulfilled than them, and the like. So that is why when I read Oscar Wilde, I was like, "Oh my God, he's saying exactly what I said, that just be yourself. Everybody else is taken. Now is the time for, as in, who will be you if you want to be you?" So that is the philosophy.
So true. So in your life, because you have been in leadership roles since quite a long time now, are there someone who has influenced you quite a bit? We can say that Oscar Wilde is one of them. Okay, but anybody else whom you have seen growing up who has influenced your decision making or approach to leadership?
So as a student, I would be given recommendations of book that read a book about this person, he's so great, or that person who has set up a very large business. And I would actually read those books. I found that they were never inspiring to me. And the reason for that, while I admired what achievements those people had, that is okay, but they did not seem like me. So I'm like, sure, he did it, but that does not mean I will do it. But that does not mean I didn't find role models or people to look up to. But the people I looked up to were not these famous names, not the Dhirubhai Ambani and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and those sort of people. Instead, they were people who, let us say, lived very close to where I live. Srinivas Uncle. Now nobody knows Srinivas Uncle. I know him, right? So I would hear his thinking and say, this guy is really amazing. Then I would look at somebody maybe who was my senior or junior in school, college, etc., and say, this is amazing. If this guy can do it, I can do it. So it wasn't so much how great the person was, but how much like me that person was, which led me to believe that I can also achieve it. And in this format, I have had many influences of many people. I have had people who are very clear in thinking, and I'm like, this is amazing. How can this person think like this? I have had people who truly are very generous and giving and kind. And I'm like, shucks, I had read about these people. So I keep coming across people who seem to be identifiable by me, and they are ahead of me in something or the other, which I would like to also follow their lead.
Right. That's so relatable, actually. You feel that when you see those legacies, you feel they're not achievable or you don't want to achieve that. But when you see people around you taking those decisions, taking those processes, it's absolutely inspiring and it inspires a lot of work. So you have been given your experience in Web3. How do you see the industry evolving in the next few years, especially with new technologies coming in like AI and blockchain?
So if we move away from headline, which will, suddenly get very hyped up about, oh, Web3, AI, crypto, blockchain, drones, mobile computing, and so many other things. And then suddenly they will give up and say, the era is over, it was just a fad. So they take very extreme views. But if you go away from that, actually there has to be some alignment between you as a person, your thought process, and the work that you do, which allows you to be part of that process for a prolonged period of time. So one of the things that all technological innovation has been up to since I graduated from engineering in the early 90s up to now is that tech innovation has largely been about democratization, right? For example, earlier I remember when I was a kid, there were very few people who had a telephone connection at home. So the rest of the people would have to go to these people's house requesting a phone call, right? And then now everybody, even the lower class people, have a mobile phone access, right? So that democratizes information and communication, and then the internet, then the e-commerce, and a whole host of other things. Web3 is, I think, the pinnacle of such democratization, because not just does it make power, influence, and ability available to many people, as the internet did, as e-commerce did, as mobile phones did, but it actually removes the central authority, or it promises to remove the central authority, and thereby you become supreme in your environment. So that is the driving force. Now, having said that, how it actually gets implemented leaves a lot to be desired, right? As in, in philosophy, some things may be good, in principle, some things may be good. But as we saw with every technological innovation, the first few use cases or the first tsunami of users was often a bad user. Like, for example, when internet became popular in the mid 90s in a country like India, then pirated software, pirated music, and pornography were the most commonly used case of the internet. And a lot of people thought that now this internet is a bad thing, right? Because the bad player often acts first. And we are presently in that phase of Web3 where profiteers, rent seekers, gatekeepers are the ones who are actually not allowing this industry to grow. But like every industry that I have been part of, I am assuming that the time will come when, the true value will be created, and I am working towards that.
So, 3 values from Web3 revolution that you could give to our listeners.
One is democratization, which means everybody is equal, right? We are all equal. We may have some different backgrounds, but we all are equal. The second one is disintermediation, which means when you have got to do task A, you don't have to go to like X and Y and Z and every one of them. Like, let's say somebody is a builder, somebody is a broker, somebody is a sub-broker, somebody is a registrar, and all of these people form a huge chain before you can buy property. So this is an example of an intermediated process. One of the philosophies about Web3 is disintermediation. Just like Airbnb bypassed a lot of steps to make people, even bypass hotels. So I think disintermediation is a very good one, would be the second one after democratization. And the third one, I think, would be technological empowerment. So far, what has happened is that if you want to harness technology, first of all, you've got to be some form of an engineer, ideally in a first world country or have a lot of resources. Web3 technologies have made technology very easy. People without engineering backgrounds, without programming or engineering or coding backgrounds are also able to make products. So those would be the three: democratization, disintermediation, and technological empowerment.
So Ajeet, the Indian government is emphasizing a lot on innovation in Indian startups. So how can advisory firms like Reflexical help balance short-term economic goals with long-term technological advancements?
So the answer depends on the stage at which the venture or the startup founder is. For example, suppose a startup founder is at a stage where saying, I want to do something, which means they are not even finalized on the idea. Then a mentor, and I prefer to use that word as advisor sounds more professional, mentor sounds more personal. I prefer the word mentor, though Reflexical is listed as an advisory firm. But I mentor the founder to help them find their true motivations and help them decide which area or business idea they should be adopting. I don't tell them the idea because obviously they are the founder, that is their job, but I guide them. If somebody has an idea but is not able to action them, then I give them some few tasks which allow them to either give up the idea or move it at least one step forward. If somebody has already built something and is having troubles going to the market, which is very common for technical people because their focus is very much on building a product as opposed to building an audience, user base, investor base, etc., then I think that part, I often even help them set up teams, maybe even get in a co-founder. So I could give you more and more examples, but at the end of it, I stay away from cookie cutter advice. By that I mean that there is no one advice that works for everybody. You could make general statements like invest in your people, which may be true in all cases, but they are not actionable. So I tend to focus on the specific founder, the specific startup, and try to find out what will work for them. And in doing this, I have my own experiences, my own relationships, my own biases, which come into the picture.
Okay, so this is a question I really want to put across to you. Okay, first of all, that you are into technology, okay, but you come across as a person who is very welcoming and very centered and happy in life. Usually you don't see these people in the technological world. So can you tell me what centers Ajeet Khurana? Like, is it some practices that you're following, everyday rituals you're following, anything?
I think that probably an answer such as I meditate every morning or I do yoga, etc., might have been appropriate, but I don't. So I can actually answer that question, but not with one of those. I think that there are just one or two things that probably have been ingrained in me since my early 20s, which have helped me. Number one is that I try to listen. Every one of us, including myself, are very keen to articulate our point, to get our thought process across, which is fine. But if this comes at the cost of listening, not just hearing the sound that is coming from the other person's mouth, but actually listening and trying to understand the other person, I think it helps a lot. And the second one would be that when I find myself very passionate about something, I could be unhappy with a person, I might want to teach somebody a lesson, I might get angry, or I might get very passionate, I might get very excited, I might be like, this is something I want to do. Whenever something stokes my passion positively or negatively substantially, while it is not possible to do it at that moment because you're being very passionate, after that, I do spend some time thinking about what was it really about that task, opportunity, action, and my nature that got me so passionate. What really was it, right? And then I find that often it is not as would be superficially applicable. It might actually be that I was reacting to a different situation. It may be that somebody else had told me something at some other point, which I was projecting into this situation. So listening and introspection, I think those would be the two, and nothing more formal than that.
Great. So going forward, what are your personal goals and ambitions that you think that, along with probably the company's goals or, people around you, how have you taught yourself in the next 5 years?
So if you had asked me this question like 20 years ago, I would have been able to give you a more tangible answer. However, over the past 20 years or so, I have had, let us say, several successes in my career, professionally and otherwise. And every time I achieve a certain milestone, it is actually ridiculous to note that it is not very pleasing, because now I have that other milestone, which is bigger and further away, right? So I find that if 20 years ago I knew I would be at this point, I would think, wow, I must be really successful. But with every consecutive success, I don't feel great about that success, because now there is some other success. After having pursued so much of that, I said, this is like almost saying that every happiness that you seek eventually doesn't make you happy. And that is pathetic. So what do you do to actually feel fulfilled when you achieve a milestone? And I realized it was actually not that difficult. I discovered it by accident, to be honest, that instead of trying to keep these milestones for yourself, if you can keep it for others. So if I find somebody who is, let us say, my neighbor's son, and I find that this guy has a lot of potential, and I say, you know what, I'm going to help this guy become. Now, when this guy becomes something and I had a role to play, however small, this is intensely satisfying. And if doing that for my neighbor's son is so satisfying, surely doing it for my two sons is more satisfying. In fact, my entire desire to be in mentoring and advising came from that, because when I help other people achieve a certain amount of success, I find that very pleasing. I look at what that person was when I met her or him at the first point, and then they reached a certain point, and I'm like, this was beyond their wildest dreams. Again, please note, I'm not taking credit for their success. I am, however, enjoying the process of being their companion during their journey.
So tell me three pros and cons of cryptocurrency, and how is it today, and is there any future of it coming forward?
So let's hope there is a future of it, because I have like totally hitched my wagon to the crypto star. But pros and cons, I think that pro is that it is truly global in nature. Another pro is that it is transparent. Even if something is going wrong, you can see, because it's on the blockchain, which is a open distributed ledger. And the third, it is unlike many other technological innovations, it is easy for entrepreneurs to get in it. Users always found it easy. When you use payment wallets, e-commerce, users do find it easy, but entrepreneurs would find technology difficult. So those would be three pros. The three cons are that it is so easy that it also makes it easy for the bad actor. That means it can be misused. That would be the first one. The second one is that while philosophically this idea of decentralization, disintermediation are fabulous, but they tend to make people who are in positions of power very insecure. So if you say, hey, you have US dollar and UAE dirham and Indian rupee and whatever else, and let's not use that, let's use this cryptocurrency instead, it is actually quite a insecurity inducing thought for people who are in positions of power, and they will quite likely never reconcile to this. And the third one is that while I find that most founders who get into cryptocurrency do it with the right intention at the time of founding, but when they get in and they access some money, unfortunately they cross over to the dark side, and they pursue their own goals at the cost of the goals of the industry.
Okay, so because cryptocurrency is still not, I believe, used by common people, it hasn't come down to a place where common people are using for transactions every day. When do you see this happening?
So if you had asked me this like a decade back when I started this entire journey, I would have said by 2020. Now we are 5 years after 2020 and it has not happened. So clearly my forecasts and predictions on dates of when things will happen must be taken with a pinch of salt. Having said that, now with so much discussion going on with the regulators for including cryptocurrency in the payment processes, the US President Trump.
My plan to ensure that the United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world, and we'll get it done.
You're making very favorable signals. Not much has happened, but the signaling is all positive. The number of users in crypto, when I say number of users, I mean somebody who has touched crypto at least once, not necessarily done much with it, is now reached 400 million in the world, right? And given that the population is around 8 billion, really at around 1 billion odd, we should start seeing some saturation, because that is the amount of people who access advanced technologies. So I think that we are at a ripe point in our history for adoption to get significant. And I hope that in another 3 odd years, by the year 2028, while not everybody would have started becoming a user, but everybody would know somebody else who is a user.
Great note to end. Okay, thank you so much, Ajeet, for your time, for your insights, for your the process that you have followed in life, which has led to this. And I'm sure there's a long way to go for you. Okay, thank you for joining in my show.
So, a short time ago, I did not know about this podcast. And luckily, I got connected with you. I went and saw the people you have interviewed and the approach you take, I find it very refreshing, because what has happened is that podcasts have often become about making scandalous statements, provoking people, because then those people will want to react and respond and tell other people to respond, and it becomes about views. It does not become about thought. It does not become about insight. It does not become about depth. And that is what I found in this podcast and the effort that you are taking. So to that extent, I congratulate you on pulling this off successfully, and that is why it makes me extra privileged to be part of it. Thank you very much, Mohsinaa. This was very good. Thank you.
Same here. Same. Thank you so much for joining in.